We Aborigines of Lancashire, by which I mean the original inhabitants and not the Australian style of Aborigine, are extremely lucky because we're surrounded by lots of mildly dramatic but thoroughly enjoyable countryside. Me, personally, I live in the Wyre bit, which has just as many fells and forests, and rivers and public rights of way and sheep and stuff as the rest of the county. But it's cheaper on petrol, which is why me and Jeannie McIntosh thought we'd show said countryside off a bit in this episode, bearing in mind when choosing our routes that we're wheezy old farts who have difficulty climbing a curbstone without ropes and pulleys. We've covered Beacon Fell before in one of our earlier, more orange episodes. However, much like Kim Kardashian, we probably should have covered the back end more but didn't. So for our first ramble, Jeannie McIntosh parked her jalopy at somewhere called the Car Wags Picnic Area, or something equally as stupid, unloaded her Zimmer from the boot and we headed off into the Rocky Wood. Avoiding the sinister-sounding Life for a Life Memorial Arboretum on the other side of the road. There are several different routes to follow around the rump of Beacon Fell, but with our usual stupidity we quickly found ourselves lost, hunting for any arrows nailed to tree trunks we could find, regardless of their colour. There are stags up here, we didn't see any, but we did see numerous carvings, most of which were created by the artist Thompson Dagnall. There's a trail you can follow if you want to see them all, but we didn't have enough sense of direction to work out where it was. Beacon Fell was also full of bivouacs that afternoon, mostly useless constructions presumably created by Cub Scouts unacquainted with wattle and daub or basket weaving. Unfortunately, they didn't provide enough cover for a pair of old fogies addicted to coffee such as us to take a covert pee away from prying eyes. So we struggled on through the woods, which on film all start to look the same unfortunately, until approximately 14 hours later we stumbled across the Bowland Visitor Centre. Incredibly, the bogs were still open, despite the Queen being less than 3 days dead. Once we'd emptied ourselves, we decided to forego the customary brew at the cafe. We couldn't afford to extend our mortgages anymore and we'd run out of major organs to sell. So we continued the vertiginous climb to the summit, where we were greeted by several people on crutches and in wheelchairs who'd passed us with speed on the way up. Then we fell off the top, looking at Parlick Pike in the distance. Onward to our second ramble, which started when we parked the car on an already flattened hedgehog at Brock Bottoms. Rather than following the more gentle dog walker's route to the ruins of the mill, there's another orange episode covering that in the Lancashire Footnotes archive somewhere. We took the alternative hardcore path to the bottom of the Roman cuttings, allegedly, at Snaperake Lane. Don't ask me why it's called that. There are some really stupid sounding names around these parts. It was a pleasant enough ramble once we'd worked out where the footpath actually ran. The "you will be eaten by guard dogs if you set foot on this property" signs pointed us in the right direction, with trees, fields, bushes, the River Brock, more trees, some sort of engineering construction, presumably to do with the waterboard, down in the valley below us, nettles, squirrels, birds, and some other plants, the names of which we couldn't be bothered researching. Admittedly, it was a bit steeper in parts than we'd anticipated. We should have brought a ladder or had spikes fitted to our toe caps. Unfortunately, as it turned out, we couldn't reach the Roman cuttings. Apparently, half the fell had fallen off the week before and was currently being repaired, at least in Potentia, by Wyre Council, much like Bleasdale Circle. Wyre Council have quite a few "we're working on it honestly" projects in hand. We took an alternative route back to Brock Bottoms to avoid the 700-foot drop to our deaths down the precipitous valley walls, via an ancient holloway sparsely populated by scattered Tudor farmhouses with some vaguely entertaining names, such as Lower Lickhurst and Button Lane and Massive Bell End. I might have dreamt that last one, and some old-fashioned bridges and stuff. The circular walk was about 2.5 miles in circumference and would normally have taken about an hour for any hikers not quite so dilapidated as us. We arrived back at the car the following Thursday morning looking bewildered and malnourished. Undeterred by our previous failures, our third walk in the Wyre took us from the impressively named Grasdale Bridge, down through the picturesque northern end of Grasdale Beck, round the depleted end of Grasdale Reservoir, and back along the road through some farmyard or other whose name I can't recall at the moment, over the brow of some hill whose name I've also forgotten, along the remains of the alleged Roman road and past a standing stone, through the disused sheep pens now acting as a temporary playground for some purple-headed kids, and back to the car where, against all logic, I somehow managed to delete all 5 hours worth of the footage I'd taken. It was an accident. By this point I was tired and emotional, and consequently gave up. The scenery up here is gorgeous, but I wasn't about to re-walk the entire lot just to prove it, so if you don't believe me, you'll just have to visit the place for yourself. On the way home, we took another wrong turn and found ourselves lost in the mountains. God only knows how we managed it, but we ended up at some Quaker burial ground in the middle of nowhere. Then we ran out of petrol. It was all a bit dreadful, really. Enough. Subscribe if you want. I can't say as I blame you if you don't. We'll be back again as soon as possible, hopefully somewhere more entertaining.